Hi, it's me, Adem. The story begins with a criminal who is attacking a mini-market. In the midst of the incident, there was a man who was passing the mini-market. He was accidentally hit by two girls who were running away from the pursuit of a criminal who was carrying a knife. He invited the two girls to run, but because they couldn't stand up, the criminal was preparing to attack them both. As a brave man, yes, he certainly looked very brave. He tried to fight back against the criminal man. He managed to save the two girls. However, the handsome and brave man had to fall down and was lifeless. He was hit by the criminal's knife. At the end of his life, the man felt grateful for saving the two girls. He even apologized for making the two girls cry. However, he woke up in a place that was unfamiliar to him. He thought it was a hospital, but after turning to a maid there, he was suddenly shocked because the maid immediately cried. The maid approached him while calling him Mr. Cain. He was even surprised by the figure of a young mother who hugged him. She said that she was his mother. After calming down, Cain tried to get used to his body. It made his mother and the maid feel confused. They assumed that Cain was still dazed because he had slept for a whole week. After getting so much attention, his mother felt that Cain needed to eat. She then asked the maid to prepare soup for Cain. After they both left there, Cain then looked in the mirror and saw himself. He was shocked to see himself becoming a child. He then checked around to make sure if he had really been reincarnated. Even though he knew that he did not survive, he was grateful that he had saved the two girls before. When Cain was confused with himself, the maid named Sylvia came in and saw Cain, who was checking his anaconda. As a kind and caring maid, Sylvia thought that Cain had wet his pants and immediately pulled down Cain's pants. He immediately screamed in embarrassment. After he finished eating, Cain was then carried by Sylvia. But thanks to Sylvia being there, he learned some important information about himself. First, his full name is Cain von Silford. He is now 3 years old, and his father is named Cain von Silford. His mother is named Sarah, and the older sister, who is 2 years older than him, is named Rain. Other information is that his mother turned out to be the second wife of Garm. Garm's first wife is named Maria, with 2 sons named Jin and Alec. Garm turned out to be a high-class nobleman. He used to handle border issues in his country, capitalizing on their private military forces after being continuously taught by Sylvia. Cain was excited because various things were there, ranging from forest monsters, adventure, and magic. Seeing Cain, who was enthusiastic about learning magic, Sylvia also told him that it was too early for a child his age to practice magic. It would be better if Cain learned to read first. Then, he remembered the memories of his past life, which even though he was gone, but he seemed to have no regrets at all in his old world. Garm was very proud of Cain because he could already read. While hugging her younger brother, Raina also boasted of her brother who could also count. Even though he was praised several times, Cain could only remain silent because he was actually in high school. The mother who thought Cain was a genius child. Cain instead humbled and praised Sylvia, who taught him. After knowing, Garm became a little suspicious because Cain suddenly studied hard. The mother also felt that the change happened right after Cain woke up. Hearing this, Cain and Sylvia suddenly became worried. After being told the reason, Garm then asked what Cain wanted. He immediately asked to be read a book about history and magic. Cain seemed very interested in magic, but it was still not allowed until he was 5 years old. His mother was not even sure if her son would be able to master magic, but apparently, just by learning through reading books, Cain was able to use some basic magic. Long story short, Cain did something stupid that almost got himself caught. While practicing magic, Cain was surprised because Rainey was already in front of him. He thought that his older sister knew about it. However, it turned out that Rainey suspected something else, namely that Cain was secretly learning about the outside world. But after Rainey told him many things, Cain also got quite a lot of information about his new world. One of them was the first king of the country, named Yuya. It made Cain realize that Yuya was Japanese like himself. Rainey also told the various types of races that existed in their world, namely elves, dwarves, and human animals. Until 2 years had passed. Now Cain was 5 years old. That meant he was already allowed to use magic. On the way, Cain was amazed by the outside world, where there were lots of royal people shopping in the market. Then Cain asked Rain about magic status. Rain immediately brought up her magic status. There, Cain was amazed by the status of his older sister, who was able to use 3 elements of magic. His father also told him that their country had a belief called Marineford. which was a belief that worshipped 7 gods. The point of Cain's baptism turned out to be just reporting the age of the chain that had reached 5 years to the 7 gods. Then in this way, the baptized child will get magic and also the gift of a certain god. Then, when the priest delivered the report to the 7 god statues in front of him, he was unexpectedly surprised because his consciousness was transferred to face the gods. Each god and goddess there has a variety of different gifts. Long story short, the 7 gods gave their respective gifts to Cain. After their time was up, Cain had to return to his new world. But at the end, he found a Xenom who laughed just before he returned. After returning, Cain was asked to show his magic status, but instead, he said he wanted to go to the bathroom. While he was hiding, Cain was shocked because of all his skill level statuses. The skills he had really didn't make sense. Cain felt that it should be hidden. He even found the creator magic given by Xenom to fake his magic status. Long story short, while Cain and his family were celebrating his birthday, they were curious about Cain's magic status. Garm then asked Cain to show his status window. They were surprised because Cain received gifts from 7 gods at once. Moreover, Garm was surprised to see the amount of mana owned by Cain, which was abnormal. With all the skills, magic, and mana owned by Cain, it is certain if Cain's mana can definitely succeed in all fields. Garm then forbade Cain to show his magic status in front of others. He was afraid that Cain would be used by the government. After that, Cain, who was resting, he found a tutorial book for summoner magic. Cain immediately tried it, but unexpectedly it turned out that Rainey and Parma were not far from that place. It made the monster shift its focus to the 2 girls. Cain then ventured to attack the monster. He didn't want his sister and Parma to get hurt. He was determined not to make them cry like the 2 girls in his previous life. Cain used the summon skill again to cancel the monster he summoned. As a result, the monster was successfully returned to its original place. Rain and Parma cried because Cain was helplessly limp, but Cain tried to calm them down and said that he was okay. And finally, Cain felt happy because he could create a happy smile from the 2 girls. Long story short, there was a day of Cain's birthday celebration which was attended by the residents. The father asked what Cain wanted to do in the future. Cain replied that he wanted to learn many things, help people in trouble, and meet many people. In the evening, when Cain and his family were having dinner together, Garm said that he would give Cain a private tutor so that Cain could learn more about his dreams. Hearing that, of course, made Cain feel very happy, and he couldn't wait for his private tutor to come. Cain imagined that his private tutor would have a muscular body or like a magical grandmother. But not long after, Sylvia told him that his private tutor had arrived. Hearing that, Cain immediately saw her through the window and intended to approach them directly with his teleportation skill, but instead he fell right on top of his private teacher. Sylvia introduced Cain's new private teachers named Millie and Nina. They both have 3 years to teach Cain about everything. Then they invited Cain to immediately start their training session. The first exercise, Millie asked Cain to show his sword skills, but Millie was troubled by him. Even Nina also felt that Cain's swordsmanship was better than Millie. Millie then asked Nina to take over by teaching Cain about magic. Nina, who has level 3 magic from the goddess of magic, was also shocked by Cain. Nina tried to teach Cain from basic, but Cain can already do that, even trying to show his talent. Nina was amazed to find a 5-year-old child who could use magic without spells, and also Cain who could use all the elements of magic. They felt that they would not be able to teach Cain anything. Soon, they were both even more surprised to find out that Cain could use item boxes. They would now teach Cain advanced magic, but they had to study outside the training ground for fear that the place would be destroyed. While they were practicing, they decided to practice outside. After getting permission from Garm, they went not too far from the city. Cain was very excited because he could finally see the outside world that he had always wanted. They arrived at a place a little far from the city. They intended to practice there. Nina told Cain to cast medium-level magic towards a large rock. The rock was located not far from there. Again and again, they were surprised to see Cain's overpowering magic power. They thought that Cain should feel weak after casting such a large amount of magic, but when they saw the amount of Cain's mana, they were even more surprised. Cain's mana seemed endless. Then Millie and Nina asked Cain to be quiet for a moment, because they both heard something from the forest. It turned out that there was a killer rabbit that came to attack. After successfully exterminating a killer rabbit, they both seemed amazed because Cain's item box was very practical. They told him that it took a lot of money to buy a magic bag. It turns out that besides item boxes, there are also magic items that have almost the same use. They both said that one day they wanted that too. After that, they intended to continue the hunt and chose to leave the search to Nina. Nina immediately performed the monster's mana detection magic. Knowing that, Cain wanted to try it. They were immediately surprised because Cain could find out the exact number of monsters there, and in the end, they tried to stop thinking about Cain's talent, which was completely irrational. When they were about to defeat all the killer rabbits, something escaped into the forest. Cain tried to chase it, but Millie and Nina forbade him from going in there because it was a dangerous forest. There were monsters too strong for them. It is known that every few tens of years, many strong monsters come out of there. The monsters will invade the city in large numbers, although Cain said that he understood. But in his heart, he wanted to enter the forest someday. Long story short, Cain was surprised to find that his level had increased quite a lot just by defeating a few killer rabbits. It turns out that Cain has a passive skill that allows him to increase EXP 100 times. He also knew it must be the work of the gods. Cain became afraid that he would be watched or even arrested by the government if he was too overpowered. When they were about to take a mission at the guild, the receptionist there thought Cain was a little adventurer. But Cain told her that he was not old enough to register as an adventurer. After Millie told him that Cain was the son of Garm, the receptionist was shocked and immediately changed her way of speaking to be much more polite. Not long after, someone came and teased Millie in front of Cain, after laughing and forcing them to pour drinks. When Nina wanted to help Millie, she was also stopped by the punk. But before he could touch Nina, Cain stopped the man and hit him with his small hand. The punk wondered who Cain really was. Cain dodged his attack and replied that he was the son of Cain von Silford. This punk was so embarrassing. He was defeated by a 5-year-old child. The punk tried to attack Cain once again. With an impromptu attack, he felt cornered again. He even intended to use his sword. Although worried, but Millie and Nina could not do anything in such conditions. Cain became angry and in the blink of an eye managed to defeat the punk. After defeating him, Cain saw Millie, who was threatened by other punks, but Cain immediately taught them, after thanking Cain. Those who wanted to forget what had just happened made Millie invite Cain to leave for the forest. After 3 years passed, now Cain is 8 years old. Sylvia informed that Millie and Nina refused to continue being Cain's private teacher. They told him that an adventurer should not stay in one place. Cain wanted to give something as a gift to them because for 3 years, Millie and Nina had taken very good care of him. After remembering that they really wanted a magic bag, that made Cain enter the forest to hunt for materials. It certainly made the guards panic, thinking that a monster outbreak had occurred in their city. Feeling that the material was enough, Cain teleported home. During the final exam, Cain thanked them and gave them the magic bag he made as a gift. They were surprised because Cain said he made the bag himself. They were very surprised that the raw materials for the bag came from 2 very powerful monsters, the Blood Ogre and the Earth Dragon. They were surprised again because it was estimated that the bag could accommodate a palace. The magic bag made by Cain was equivalent in rank to a national treasure. They were afraid that they would become the target of wicked people. Cain tried to calm them down because their magic bags could adjust to their master, but both of their magic bags had been arranged by Cain. Even so, Millie and Nina still accepted it and thanked Cain in a way that made you jealous to see it. After that, Cain and his father left for the capital. On the way, Cain realized that there was an attack in front of them. Knowing that there was a danger that wanted to disturb them, Cain then decided to leave first. Then Cain came and immediately used his magic power to fight the monster in front of him. Because he was too overpowered, he even easily defeated all the monsters in front of him. Even after defeating all the monsters, Cain then immediately healed the wounded soldiers with his magic. Not long after came the father, who was worried about Cain's condition. The father then immediately got off the train, but they were all shocked by the conditions in front of them. Even the father was also surprised by the figure who got off the carriage. It turned out to be Princess Telestia and Miss Silk. They thanked Cain and his father. it was because they had helped them from danger. After that, Cain introduced himself to the princess, but suddenly the princess felt weak. Then Cain asked permission to calm her down with magic to the princess. The princess felt happy after Cain calmed her with his magic. Now her heart felt happy and much calmer than before. After feeling better, the princess again thanked Cain for saving her from a dangerous situation. After that, Cain was invited to go together to the debut party. It was done because they both still felt anxious. In the carriage, Cain seemed to feel uncomfortable with his sitting position flanked by the princess and Miss Silk. He then asked permission to move from there, but the princess prevented him because the princess felt calm if she was next to Cain. The soldier then told them that the city of Renoma was almost in sight. He asked the passengers to get ready. They then got off the horse-drawn carriage. The princess invited Cain to rest together in the city of Renoma. When they arrived there, Cain tried to ask permission to leave, but the princess did not allow him. Instead of being able to get away from the princess, Cain was invited to stay with her. But Cain felt it was too much. He tried to refuse the request from the princess, but the princess still wanted to stay with Cain, even though Garm had offered to send a guard for the princess. But the princess still wanted to be accompanied by Cain. She said that when she was next to Cain, she would feel calmer. Reluctantly, Cain accepted the princess's invitation. But his father asked Cain to behave because he was already 10 years old. After that, they went to the room. In the room, the princesses fought over wanting to sleep next to Cain. They even stuck their mattresses together, in contrast to Cain, who felt that the previous distance was enough for them to sleep. But here, Cain could not do much. He preferred to give in and sleep together. The next day, they then continued their journey to their destination. On the way, the princess asked if Cain had slept well last night. Resignedly, Cain then said, how could he sleep well when he was in such a position? Long story short, they had arrived at their destination. Upon arrival at the royal palace, they were greeted by Daib in a kind and friendly manner. Even he was very grateful to Cain. Thanks to his keenness, Cain had protected the princess and had delivered his companions safely to the destination. Cain said that the fighters fought bravely to save the princess. After that, Cain excused himself to leave, but Daim tried to hold him back and told Cain to meet with the king first. After meeting with the king, Cain received a reward for saving Princess Telestia and Miss Silk. He even delivered the dead soldiers to the capital. Cain was appointed baron by the king and given 10 silver coins and a mansion. But there was someone who did not accept all that. He argued because Cain was still a 10-year-old child, but he had gotten such an excessive increase in level, but the king still wanted to give it to Cain. Then after that, Cain accepted happily when the king stood up to leave from there. Cain asked permission to go home, but the king did not allow him. Cain was told to wait in the guest room by the king. After a while, the king came back with the princess and her bodyguard to thank Cain. The gratitude was conveyed for helping him and invited Cain to talk about Cain's promotion. After talking with Cain, the king then offered Cain to marry the princess. However, because of their young age, the king then told them to get engaged first, because the king knew that Cain had slept with their daughter. The king also decided that Cain would live in his country. Cain felt that the request was too sudden, but it was impossible for Cain to refuse the offer. That's why Cain accepted the engagement reluctantly. Hearing that, the princess looked very happy. She couldn't wait to get engaged with Cain. Now Cain asked to the gods about his power status that was very out of the ordinary. Xenom told him that the power that Cain currently possessed was indeed impossible for ordinary humans to have. He even offered Cain to become a demigod equivalent to a holy animal or a holy dragon. After that, Xenom asked Cain to make a game for them in that world. They asked him to make a game based on Cain's knowledge when on Earth. It was because they felt that in the world of the gods was very boring. They needed new things to be entertained. Cain then thought and got an idea if he could make a product that never existed here. He felt that his homemade product would definitely be very popular in this isekai world. The story then continues in a clothing store. Cain was tired and decided to get out of the shop. He accidentally met Parma, who was training in a shop owned by her uncle named Temanis, which turned out that Temanis' shop sells various kinds of items. After a little thought, Cain asked Temanis to make a game for him. Because the idea was already there, then Cain asked Temanis to produce and sell the game. After being given an explanation, it turned out that it was a reversey game. Because the game was very simple and interesting, Timanus would gladly make the game. The materials needed were also considered quite cheap for him. Cain, who was happy, asked him to make a prototype first before selling it. As initial capital, Cain gave 1 gold coin, which Timanus felt it was too much. But Cain considered that 1 gold coin as initial investment capital. Timanus accepted it with a sense of responsibility. After saying goodbye, Cain forgot that he accompanied Raine shopping this afternoon. When Raine had just scolded Cain, she was melted thanks to Cain's overpowered flirting skills. But the problem was not over yet, because Cain had to help his sister to see and try on his sister's new clothes. But luckily, Sylvia came and told him that Timanus had asked Cain to come to his shop after completing the prototype requested by Cain earlier. Cain seemed very happy because the reversey that was made was in accordance with what he expected. Cain even tried to tell Timanus how to play reversey with enthusiasm. Cain then asked Timanus to make reversey in 2 versions, namely the noble version and the ordinary version, because Cain knew that the nobles and rich traders would definitely like items that looked very luxurious. As a start, Timanus was asked to make 50 units of the noble version of reversey and 1,000 units of the ordinary version of reversey. After hearing the number of units that Timanus had to make, he told him that his company did not have a lot of budget to make all of that. In the midst of his confusion, Cain willingly gave 5 gold coins as initial capital for Timanus. It still made Timanus very surprised. He then said that he would work as well as possible. After receiving the money, Timanus invited Cain to make a contract with the god of commerce, because by swearing using the box to the god, then for the next 3 years there will be no one who can copy Cain's original work. Along with the disappearance of the reversey, the contract with the god has been made. That way, the game product reversey has become their property. After that, Cain asked to make a noble version of reversey that would be presented to the royal family. Hearing that suddenly made Timanus surprised, and he felt inappropriate because he only had a middle to lower company. But after a while, Timanus finally agreed to make it. Parma was amazed by Cain's connections. But in his heart, Cain felt that it was not just an ordinary connection. Cain then just remembered about reversey that had disappeared. He hoped that the gods could enjoy the game he created. Long story short, Cain seemed to forget that he had to attend his debut party. Along the way, his father constantly reminded Cain to be careful with all the men who offered their daughters. Once arrived there, Cain was called by his father, who was with Mr. Eric and Silk. If the event in the previous part was an informal event, at this event they are required to show formality to respect each other's noble status they have. Eric also thanked Cain because he had saved his daughter, but it seems that Eric still harbors resentment because of the previous misunderstanding. Silk then tried to calm the atmosphere and formally thanked Cain. Unexpectedly, Cain praised Silk's dress and beauty. Eric deliberately interrupted the intimacy of the two of them with a small cough. Eric was surprised, even though Cain was only 10 years old, but he was already an expert in captivating women. Garm then said, because Raine always made Cain to constantly praise her. After saying goodbye, Garm was surprised by Cain's words of seduction. Cain reasoned that he was used to this because of his older sister, Raine, who would get angry if she wasn't praised. Along with the sound of the trumpet, the king and queen Telestia were seen welcoming all their guests. After that, the guests were invited to greet the royal family. When it was the turn of the Silford family, Cain again issued his deadly seduction, until Cain made the king wonder what kind of parenting made Cain become such a seducer. To break the ice, Cain asked permission to show the game he brought as a gift to the king. After being shown, the king was very interested and asked Cain to come to the living room after the event was over. After greeting the king, Garm discussed about Cain's treatment of Queen Telestia earlier. Cain was asked by his father to act like a 10-year-old kid in general. It suddenly made Cain realize that there are no children who have started a business and become a baron at the age of 10. Not long after, Silk came and invited Cain to chat with her. While chatting, Silk felt very happy because she could finally chat with Cain. Cain felt uncomfortable because he was always called Master. He asked Silk to change his nickname. Cain preferred to be called Cain Kun. This made Silk very enthusiastic. She kept calling Cain enthusiastically and made Cain awkward. Suddenly, 3 bad kids came and disturbed them. The fat kid praised Silk, and he hoped that later Silk would fall in love with him. But Silk responded very coldly. Long story short, because of the misunderstanding that occurred, when these 3 bad kids thought Cain was the son of Baron, who was very disrespectful, it made these 3 bad kids even invite to fight with Cain. They then invited Cain and Silk to go out of the palace. Cain felt that Silk did not need to come, but he instead got a flirtation from Silk, who immediately hugged him. The 3 bad kids again disturbed the intimacy of Cain and Silk. They tried to look cool by showing the blessings that had been given by the gods, but they were ignored, and Silk returned to being romantic with Cain. For starters, the green kid is the one who will release the magic he has. After being confused by how to cast his own magic, the green kid then took his magic book and tried to cast a spell. He also performed some rituals by doing weird dances. But the fire magic he released was very small and slow. Even easily, Cain and Silk could avoid the fire attack. Then it was the turn of the blue kid, who would show his earth magic skills. He also chanted and did the same weird dance. It made Cain and Silk feel very bored. They could easily avoid their attacks. When the green boy tried to bring out his skill again, Silk felt annoyed and stopped them all. She then explained that Cain was a baron, not the son of a baron. Then she also told him that Cain was the 3rd son of Garm, as well as the one who had saved her and Princess Telestia. Cain did all that by himself. Hearing this, the 3 little boys were shocked and realized that they had heard of a boy their age who managed to exterminate a group of orcs led by the orc general and became a baron at the age of 10. Because of this, the 3 boys immediately bowed down and asked for forgiveness from Cain. After being forgiven, the 3 bad boys immediately left there. Seeing this, Silk laughed and insinuated that Cain felt very cruel, because Cain only kept quiet even though he knew they had misunderstood him. Silk intends to tell Telestia about this. Of course, it makes Cain begged her not to say this. Silk said that she would keep this secret as long as Cain wanted to date Silk. And suddenly Telestia appeared and asked what they were hiding. Reflexively, Cain immediately covered Silk's mouth with his hand. Telestia was surprised because Cain dared to touch the lips of an unmarried girl. It was certainly considered an indecent act. Telestia threatened to tell Eric. She also asked them to tell her the truth. Although Cain looked panicked, Silk still told her the secret. Even Telestia was surprised because Silk called Cain without the title of master. It suddenly made her jealous. Telestia, who felt jealous because she also wanted to date Cain. Cain instead said that Telestia was very cute. Her cheeks were like a very adorable squishy. Cain finally agreed and was going to ask Telestia out on a date. However, unfortunately, the king suddenly appeared behind Telestia. The king invited Cain to go to the living room with him, but this time the king was not only going to talk about the Reversey game, but he was also going to discuss the words that Cain had just said. Magna gave a map to the mansion along with the key. Magna also told Cain that the king was supposed to attend a meeting. But because he heard Cain was coming to the kingdom, he refused, because he wanted to play Reversey with Cain. But suddenly there was a shout from outside the door. It turned out to be Eric, who went straight inside. He was very happy when he saw that Cain was still there. Without further ado, Eric immediately challenged Cain to play Reversey, and Cain agreed. Magna also wanted to face Cain in the Reversey game after Cain played with Eric. And not only Magna, all the people there also wanted to play with Cain. Cain was shocked. He said to himself, "If it is said that strong people will always be targeted by others," and he is someone who incarnates into an overpowered nobleman, but he had to keep it all a secret from others. Long story short, Cain searched for the location of the mansion using the map given by Magna earlier, until finally he found it. He was a little surprised to see the condition of his house, which was very messy. He then entered the house. The situation inside the house was very messy and dirty. It seemed that the house had not been inhabited for a long time. Cain surrounded the house. Although messy and dirty, the house was very spacious, guys. By using his magic power, the house that was dirty and shabby immediately turned clean again. After cleaning the mansion, suddenly Sylvia, along with 3 women and 1 man, came to visit Cain's mansion. Of course, Cain welcomed them happily. Sylvia promised to work diligently as Cain's special servant. Colin introduced himself to Cain. If his job was as butler, Cain already knew Colin from Sebas, as well as Colin, who already knew many things from Sebas. Even Colin also knew that Cain had defeated a group of orcs by himself and blew up the forest using his magic. Then he also knew that Cain turned anyone who stared at him into stone. Hearing Colin's last words made him shocked. He explained that he had never done that. Sylvia excitedly told everyone to start cleaning. She divided the tasks so that the work would be done quickly. But they were confused because they did not find a dust. Everything was very clean and shiny. Then Cain apologized and told her that he had cleaned it using his magic. Because everything was clean, Sylvia took the initiative to get ready to receive the items that were moved from Cain's old house. Colin asked to leave the house affairs to them and told Cain to return to his house immediately. Cain was surprised because he forgot about it. He had promised that today he promised to welcome his brother Jin and Alec. Cain had arrived at his house, and now he was eating with his family. Jin congratulated Cain on getting a new mansion. Rhina wanted to see Cain's new home. By using a horse-drawn carriage, he and his family arrived at his new home. After entering Cain's house, Rain was surprised to see that it was really clean. Garm was surprised to see the situation in the new house, because the building used to be shabby and dirty. Then he realized that this must all be Cain's work. Cain said that he had cleaned it using a little magic. Rainey was amazed to see a nice and shiny mansion. But her father had other thoughts because he thought this house had no artwork. Because in general, nobles are always close to art, displaying paintings, flower vases, or monster statues. Cain immediately pulled out a dragon monster using his magic. That made Sylvia and the others scream hysterically because they saw a huge red dragon monster there. Even his father was shocked. Then he asked, "How could Cain have a red dragon monster?" Casually, Cain answered if he managed to defeat it. Hearing Cain's answer, his father was shocked and then asked, when and where did Cain defeat it? Because the red dragon monster is a top-class monster. Even rank adventurers have many casualties to defeat it. Hearing his father's words, Cain was shocked, and it turned out that the preserved red dragon was worth 1,000 silver coins, or equivalent to 10 billion yen. His father told Cain that the new nobleman who owned a mansion had to hold a debut party. Cain was confused because he didn't know if he had to do that, but Colin said that he had prepared a list of invited guests and what was needed. Cain thanked him for helping him. But Cain was confused. How and what were the banquets for the nobles? Sylvia gave a suggestion to organize a banquet in Cain's style. Cain thought it was a very good suggestion. With the power of magic, Cain prepared everything. He made a glass with his magic power. Because the glass was very good, Sylvia was amazed. Cain also told Sylvia to taste the food and drinks there. Sylvia impressed because the food and drinks were very delicious. Even Sylvia asked for drinks continuously. Colin told Cain to meet the king immediately. Hearing that, Cain rushed to the royal palace. Arriving at the kingdom, the king asked why he didn't invite him to his new house party. While banging on the table, the king asked for an explanation from Cain. Because Eric and Magna got invitations, only he was not invited, even though he was the one who gave the mansion. Then Eric said, "Isn't it only the upper nobility who can invite the king?" The king remained evasive because he felt that he was Cain's future father-in-law. Cain replied that he intended to give an invitation directly when he met the king, but because he knew that the king was very busy, so he was looking for the right time to meet with the king. Then he immediately gave the invitation to the king. The king was very happy. He immediately showed off the invitation to Eric. Seeing the happy king, Cain felt relieved. Luckily, he followed Colin's advice to bring one more invitation. Cain returned home and told Sylvia and the others if the king would be present at the party later. Sylvia and the others were shocked that the king would be present. She wondered why the king would be at the party. Cain explained that he was the fiancé of the third princess named Telestia, and that made Sylvia and the others scream hysterically in disbelief. Sylvia then reminded her colleagues whether it was the king or anyone else, they had to serve them well. Cain handed over the banquet to them. The party started. Cain and his father invited the guests to enter his house. Eric and Silk thanked him for inviting them. Then Cain led them into his house. Arriving inside, Eric was surprised to see a red dragon monster preserved there. Silk was also amazed by Cain's house. She even wanted to live in the house. Colin reminded Cain that soon he had to give opening greetings to the invited guests. Cain greeted and thanked the invited guests for taking the time to attend the party. Cain invited to enjoy the banquet that was there. He invited all the invited guests to toast with him. All the invited guests were amazed because the taste of food and drinks was very delicious. Even Eric asked to take the drink home. They also praised Cain even though he was still 10 years old, but was already good at satisfying women's stomachs. And the invitees were surprised when the king came. He asked everyone to ignore him and told them to enjoy the party. The king was amazed to see the glass there. Then when he drank it, he was amazed by the drink because it tasted very good. Not only that, Cain gave the king a hamburger. He explained that the food was processed from meat piled together. After tasting it, the king really liked the food. While tasting the food, the queen came and asked why there was water gushing out of the toilet. She wanted it to also be in the royal palace. The curious king finally saw it by himself. He also wanted it to be in the palace. The king told Cain to install it in the royal palace tomorrow. Reluctantly, Cain agreed. The king shouted, praising the banquet as the best banquet. All the invited guests who were present immediately applauded. Shortly after that, Colin told Cain that Corgino, the person he hated, had arrived. Then Cain and Colin welcomed him. Corgino mocked that the house was so small that it even looked like a dog kennel. And he immediately went inside. When he saw the red dragon, he was scared to see the dragon monster that was there. Cain then told him that it was a preserved red dragon monster. Corgino scolded Cain because he didn't tell him from the beginning. Corgino walked inside grumbling and bad-mouthing Cain's house. He even insulted the guests who came. Seeing his actions, all the invited guests talked about him. He ate and drank the banquet that was served. It tasted very good, but he was dishonest and said that the food and drinks were not good. Because of his insolence, Cain was annoyed, but Colin warned Cain not to make a mess and asked him to be patient so that the party would run smoothly. When Cain wanted to give Corgino a gift glass, he asked for an even better one. But he was surprised because the king was present at the party. He immediately knelt down to him. The king asked Corgino to behave well as an example for other nobles. Silk, who was chatting with Cain, he did not realize that the king was behind him. He said that it would be better if he used the pressure from the greatest person in this country. The king, who heard, immediately replied, "I am the greatest pressure in this country." Cain was shocked. He felt guilty for speaking like that. Then he tearfully apologized to the king. Because the other day Cain was given the task by Magna to collect monster bodies. He then wanted to hand over the monster bodies to Dime. Then Dime showed the palace storage warehousey. But the warehousey, according to Cain, was too small because it certainly would not fit to accommodate the bodies of the monsters he had defeated. Then Cain told him that the monsters he had defeated were all dead. Then Cain told him that the monsters stored this time were weaker than the red dragon, namely the earth dragon monster. Hearing Cain's words, suddenly Dabe was surprised because even ranked adventurers could not necessarily defeat it. Then he told Cain to take out the monster in the field. Then they both went to the field. Then Cain took out the monster. Again, Dime was amazed to see the dragon monster that Cain took out very much. Dime also asked if Cain was a hero or a messenger from God. Hearing that, Cain was shocked by answering that he was neither a hero nor a messenger of God. He was just the son of Garm. Dime will take care of the monsters that Cain managed to defeat. But when Cain was about to leave, Dime pulled him and asked Cain to join the night training. Dime wanted to bring Cain to meet the commander. Cain was forced to join the training. Now Cain is introduced to all knights as the Baron, who defeated 30 orcs by himself. Because Cain asked where the commander was, then he told him that the commander would come if the training had started. While winking, Dime reminded Cain that the commander was a person who liked to fight. Cain suddenly imagined the commander, who looked very scary like a lizard demon. Later, when Dime was about to start the training, one of the knights said that if Cain was only 10 years old, how could he possibly survive against the knights? Dime blinked and then said, "Go ahead and try it." Then the knight who underestimated Cain challenged Cain to a fight. With a tone that seemed to underestimate Cain, he told Cain to attack him. But in one attack, he immediately fell down in pain because of the attack from Cain. But Cain himself was even surprised because it was too easy to win. When Cain was about to leave, Dime pulled Cain's hand. He said that Cain was as he expected. He immediately attacked Cain to fight all the knights there. But suddenly a blimp appeared from the sky, which turned out to be their commander. The commander immediately scolded Dame, and the knights did not deserve to gang up on a child. Suddenly the commander hugged Cain in order to calm Cain, who was thought to be scared. But Cain focused on the commander's long ears. That meant the commander was from the elf race. Then the commander scolded Dame again. Dame explained what happened. Cain was actually a little boy who managed to save Princess Celestia. Even Cain defeated the orcs alone. Suddenly the commander changed drastically after hearing those words. The commander immediately invited Cain to duel with her. Cain was confused because this was a training session. Why did it become a fight? Then Dame asked the commander to introduce herself first. But the commander didn't want to talk anymore. She just wanted to fight with Cain, because according to her, a swordsman speaks by using a sword. Cain was upset to hear the words of the knights, who said that Cain would not be able to win against the commander. Then Cain protested because the sword he used was only a wooden sword. Then the commander told Cain that her sword had been made blunt. The fight began with a very fast tempo. Cain was able to keep up with the commander's speed. Unexpectedly, Cain was able to win the fight. But the commander was resigned, she fell in love and decided to marry the 10-year-old Cain. The commander immediately embraced Cain with a flushed and flowery face. The knights who saw it were shocked. Cain tried to explain to the commander that he was still 10 years old, and Cain didn't even know the commander. Then she introduced herself. The commander was named Cain von Silford. She was the daughter of the Duke of Silford, who ruled the forest in the north. Then Cain invited him to marry. She didn't care about the age difference with Cain. Suddenly Cain hid behind Dame, then said that Cain should not arbitrarily determine a marriage. Cain replied, if it didn't matter, because she had promised not to return to her country before getting a future husband. Cain said maybe it doesn't matter to Cain. But what about Cain? While imagining the king, the father of his fiancée, Cain hoped that Dime would defend him, but Dime slept instead. Cain finally understood, and she would discuss with the king about her marriage to Cain. Because of that, she will definitely be scolded by the king. Long story short, they are facing the king. Because of the arrival of Cain and Cain, it certainly makes the king surprised. Then confidently, Cain said that she would marry Cain. Cain explained that all of this started with his fight with Cain, and Cain ended up falling in love with him. The king asked why Cain didn't explain about his engagement to Princess Celestia, but Cain said, didn't the king tell him to keep the engagement a secret? Then Garm asked Cain, does Cain know what Tefana's position is? Cain only knew that Tefana was a knight commander. Then the king told the history of the land of Ribalt. In ancient times, there was a land of elves. All elves have beautiful faces. Therefore, many people hunted and even kidnapped to become slaves. But thanks to the kingdom of Esfort, the first king named Yuya, he eliminated all discrimination against every race, especially the elf race. The land of Ribelt was protected by the kingdom, and now Ribelt is an independent country, the same as this country. Tefana is a princess in Ribelt. That means if Cain is proposed by Tefana, Cain will become king in the land of Ribelt. The king also told Tefana about Cain's engagement to Princess Celestia. At first, Tefana was surprised to hear the king's explanation, as well as the greatness of Cain, which was recognized by the king. But that actually made Tefana want to marry Cain even more. Seeing that certainly made the king, Magna, and Garm confused. The king really understood Tefana's feelings. But even so, Tefana had to make a letter to ask her father's permission. Tefana immediately stood up and immediately prepared to make the letter. After Cain and Tefana left, everyone began to suspect who Cain really was, because at the age of 10, but he was already very strong. Then Daim told when he asked Cain about whether he was a hero or a messenger of God. And Cain answered him with strange behavior. Magna had the idea to access the power with a magic book. On the other hand, when Cain was walking alone, he met with Dime. Cain said that he was exhausted from constantly fighting with Tefana, who wouldn't let him go. Daim admitted that Cain's level of fighting with Tefana could not be followed by other knights. Cain told him that after often fighting with Tefana, Cain now earned the title of Swordmaster in his status. Then suddenly heard Tefana's voice. Cain ran away, but was detained by Daim and brought back to meet the king. After getting there, Cain was surprised because many people had gathered there. Then the king showed an emperor-level book, which was the inheritance of the royal family. Of course, Cain was happy and wanted to read it. Cain began to read the book. He was so amazed by the explanation of magic that he didn't know yet. And here a fact was known, where actually the royal family could not read the book. That's because the book was written in Japanese. Cain was shocked and remembered that the first king had a real name that came from Japan, and surely Yuya was a reincarnation like Cain. Cain was trapped and could not answer the king's questions. The king questioned who Cain really was. In his heart, Cain was afraid that people would stay away from him if he told the truth. Because there was no choice, Cain finally spoke the truth. But before, Cain reminded everyone to keep it a secret, and if they could not accept, then he would leave the kingdom. Cain apologized for keeping the secret, where Cain actually still had memories from his previous life. It made everyone there shocked. Then Garm asked if Cain was his son with Sarah. Cain answered yes, because he is a reincarnation. Cain also told that when he was baptized, he met the 7 gods, and until now he often meets with the gods. The king was shocked to hear this. Then Cain showed his magic status. Seeing that, everyone there was shocked. The king emphasized actually if everyone knew the original status that Cain had, the whole world would kneel before him, because he was chosen by the gods. Cain refused that. Cain was satisfied with his current life, a life filled with the warmth of family and the excitement of adventure to find out the unknown. Cain said that in his old life, he was always alone because the only grandfather he had died. At this time, Cain was very grateful for all the blessings that had been given to him. Friends and family who made his life warmer. At this time, Cain felt very happy. Cain apologized to the king because he had kept his secret all this time. Cain wanted everyone to treat him as usual, even though they knew who he really was. The king also understood Cain's feelings, and the king would treat him as usual. But it seems that Cain is more suitable to be king. Hearing those words, Cain was very surprised, but suddenly Tefana came and immediately showed a reply to the letter from her father. Tefana was allowed to marry Cain, and suddenly she immediately imagined the wedding. Then Cain was invited back by Tefana to return to dating in the arena. The king and the others smiled because Cain was still Cain. The king remained king. He ordered everyone there to keep who Cain really was a secret. The king really hopes that Cain, who has the power of God, can protect this kingdom. After that incident, Princess Telestia and Silk were angry with Cain. They asked Cain not to add more fiancés. When they were asking for an explanation from Cain, suddenly Tefana came and dragged Cain away from there to strengthen their love. The story continues when Cain is in a library. Cain reads an emperor-level magic book. Anyone who can read the book containing Japanese. Then it means he comes from another world. Then Yuya introduced himself. He is the first king of this country, and he is Japanese. Yuya wrote down how he came to this world. At that time, Yuya had an accident in Japan. Then he thought he was dead, but it turned out that he was summoned to another world. Unlike Cain, he came with the appearance of his previous life. Then the voices of Telestia and Silk were heard. Cain immediately closed the magic book. Telestia asked if Cain was busy and what he was doing. Then Silk said, if Cain must be studying for the school entrance exam, because soon Cain will enter his new school. Telestia asked, is that true? Cain was forced to say if it was true. However, they invited Cain to study together. Cain made an excuse and said that he had other activities after this. Then they asked how about tomorrow, but Cain refused and said that tomorrow was also not possible. Cain continued to apologize to them. Cain had already left, but they still asked when Cain could study with them. Meanwhile, Cain tried to escape from there. After successfully escaping from them, Cain got into even worse trouble. From afar, Tefana shouted, where did Cain want to go? She invited Cain to train with her outside the city. Cain was confused about why everyone was asking him to go when he was busy. Cain kept apologizing and said to find another time. On the way, he mumbled and apologized to everyone. Not long after, he returned home to prepare himself. Cain dressed up as a hero. Today was a special day for him, because today was his 12th birthday, where he could register as an adventurer. He had been waiting for this day for a long time, because in order to become a hero, he studied and practiced with his teacher since he was 4 years old. Without lingering, Cain went into the building. He was amazed to see the situation there. Cain bumped into a man, then he asked if this was Cain's first experience. Then Cain replied he had just turned 12 years old, and he was going to register himself as an adventurer. The man said if Cain didn't need to push himself too much. Cain felt that he had met the red-haired man before. Then Cain headed to the reception. Retia welcomed Cain warmly. Then she gave the registration form to Cain. After writing his name, Cain was told to drip blood onto a stone. That way he could register the magic energy that Cain had in the guild card. Cain got a G-rank guild card. After receiving the guild card, Cain remembered his teachers who were at the D level, and he was curious about them. Before Cain left, Retia reminded Cain to be careful on duty. Suddenly, the other adventurers disturbed them. One of the adventurers mocked Retia, who had promised to accompany them tonight. Seeing this condition, Cain felt déjà vu. Then the men attacked Cain. Cain kept dodging until they injured their own attacks, when the gang leader held the sword. Suddenly, a red-haired man named Claude appears. Then Claude asks why the adventurers are bothering a child. The adventurers immediately ran away, they said, if they had marked Cain's face. Cain thanked Claude for cleaning up the mess. Claude praised Cain's skills. He thought that Cain was a strong boy. Claude gave Cain some fruit juice since he was still a child. Claude asked if Cain had practiced before because the movements Cain made earlier were definitely the result of practice. Cain said that he practiced with a private tutor who was an adventurer. Cain asked why the men had called Claude from Ice Flame. Claude said that the name came from his party, because Claude used a fire sword while his wife had ice magic. Cain understood that Claude made a party with his wife. Then Claude reminded Cain to immediately find the right people to build a party. Then Claude said, if in a party, Cain could take many missions and rank up faster. Claude showed his guild card, which was ranked A. But Claude said that his ability was not comparable to the first king who was ranked triple S. He also said that based on rumors that the triple S rank card is black. Claude was suddenly hit on his head by his wife. Then Lena scolded Claude for relaxing even though they had a mission. Cain introduced himself to Lena. Lena said that if anyone bothered Cain, just call Lena. Then Lena pulled Claude's ear while scolding him. After that, Cain saw the mission for rank G, then muttered, because his first task was just cleaning the restaurant. Actually, it is very easy if done with magic, but instead he was looking for a more exciting mission. Cain wanted a mission related to fighting monsters, and he managed to find an interesting mission that was exterminating goblins in the Eastern Forest. Adventurers get rewards based on the number of goblins captured. Cain was very enthusiastic about accepting his first mission. He rushed to complete the mission. However, he met Tefana, who then invited Cain to train. Cain refused because he was going on his first mission as an adventurer. Tefana will follow Cain. Dime said that Tefana should train, but Tefana instead left the training to Dime. Tefana pulled Cain's hand to leave. Dime apologized to Cain for not being able to help him from the commander. Not long after they arrived at the Eastern Forest. Then Tefana said, it turned out that the forest was the location of the mission. Tefana was very happy to be with Cain. Then Cain did a goblin search from his eyes. They continued to run forward, and it turned out that the goblins were capturing traitors. As the commander of the Royal Knights, Tefana released her ability to defeat the goblins together with Cain. While attacking, she imagined marriage with Cain. After finishing with the goblins, Tefana wanted to kiss Cain, but from behind appeared green lizard troops. Cain told Tefana to take the traitors away from there. Cain released his magic ability to finish off the green lizard. After that, he returned to the guild office. While in the forest, Millie and Nina, as Cain's former teacher, were confused looking for the lizard that had disappeared, seeing that they left the forest. On the other hand, Cain met Retia. He said that he had defeated 30 green lizards. Suddenly, Retia was shocked and immediately brought Cain to Cedric. Cedric couldn't believe that Cain had defeated the green lizard, because he knew that Cain had just registered as an adventurer this morning. Then Retia said, Isn't it too much if Cedric suspects Cain's words? Cain denied, because he had indeed finished off the lizard. Cedric still didn't believe it, because in his form Cain was just an ordinary person. Because there are many people who cheat to get rewards, Cedric will hold Cain's guild card. Suddenly Cain was shocked, even though he was very happy to have a guild card. Then the guild master came out of his room. He asked why Cedric was so noisy. Cedric explained that Cain lied about defeating the green lizard. After that, Tefana came out of the room and immediately hugged her future husband. Hearing that, they were shocked. Then the guildmaster explained that Cain was a baron, and he is the son of Margrave Garm. After Cain married Tefana, then he officially became the brother-in-law of the guildmaster. Cedric was very surprised to hear this fact, while Cain was also surprised after learning that Master Guild was Tefana's older brother. Cedric apologized to Cain for insulting him. The guildmaster gave a reward by raising Cain to C rank, but Tefana said that Cain deserved to be A rank, because when he was 10 years old, he defeated the giant red dragon. As a result, Cain got the A rank and will be given a special mission. On the other hand, the gods and goddesses saw the incident from the magic screen. They said they would send Cain to train with the right person, so that he would become even stronger. Because Aaron's seal was almost broken, and if he managed to escape, it was very dangerous. Meanwhile, Cain woke up after hearing Sylvia's voice. Cain just realized that he would be late. Sylvia guiltily apologized and said that today was Cain's entrance exam, but she was late waking Cain up. Cain said that he still had time to take the exam. Cain hurriedly ran out of the gate. And of course, Cain wouldn't be late because he could use his teleportation power. Within seconds, Cain had arrived at the Royal Academy. Cain immediately entered and went to the receptionist. Then the receptionist asked Cain's name and gave him the exam number with participant number 285. Cain then rushed to class. There, Cain was confused because he didn't know anyone there. He wondered if Telestia and Silk were in a different class from him. Soon, the teacher and supervisor entered the room. Because the exam was about to begin, she also told the exam restrictions. If the examinees are caught cheating, then the participants will be kicked out of the class. The exam time given is 2 hours. Then the time sand is placed on the table indicating the exam has started. Cain was surprised to see the exam question sheet. He was very happy because it was very easy for him. Cain quickly finished so that he could take a break. Because the questions were so easy for him, Cain then relaxed. The teacher approached him and said whether Cain was sure to relax even though the exam had only been going on for 30 minutes. Cain said that he had answered all the questions. That made the teacher feel surprised. The teacher went back to her desk and announced that time was up. She told the students to raise their hands and put the answer sheets on the desk. Next, the students will take the measurement of the amount of magic power. Cain was very excited about the test. They gathered in the field to shoot magic at a target. The teacher said the students must master the direction of the target. Cain asked it if he could use full power, and the teacher replied of course he could, because the surroundings were equipped with protective shields, so that no matter how much magic Cain releases, it will still be fine. The test began. One of the students was preparing to shoot at the target. He exerted all his abilities and cast fireball magic. Cain was surprised because they only released a small amount of magic. Then the second participant came forward. Again, they released ordinary power. But Cain realized, of course, 12-year-old kids generally only have a small amount of power, and he almost used his greatest inferno magic. But he didn't want to be conspicuous. As much as possible, he would use normal magic like other kids his age. Cain's turn came. Cain prepared and said the magic spell. Everyone was shocked to see Cain's blue flame magic. He directed the magic towards the target and made the wall and magic shield there destroyed. Cain said, earlier the teacher said that he could release basic magic with full power. The teacher said that basic magic could not have that much destructive power. Cain said he only cast fire blue magic. The supervising teacher said they should check if there is anyone behind the wall. The students were instructed to head to the sword test venue. Cain and his friends went to the sword test ground. The exam was about to start, the teacher said, if they invited an A-level adventurer there. And that man was Claude. Cain was happy because he could see Claude again. Claude was surprised that Cain was there. Then Cain would be Claude's sparring partner. Cain tried to refuse, but he still had to compete with Claude. Claude was going to assess Cain's ability. Claude was excited to fight Cain because Cain was able to use boosts, and Claude also used boosts. Until the participants were shocked at their fighting speed, the teacher told them to stop and told them to do the test casually. Then Claude said it seemed like he and Cain should end the match. Claude wanted to do the mission with Cain. Cain replied, as much as possible, he would refuse the invitation. The teacher stopped Claude and Cain. He already understood Cain's abilities. Cain was allowed to go home, but Cain had to come to the admission announcement later. Cain apologized to the teacher for messing up the exam. Cain was upset with Claude, but Claude pretended not to hear. Cain rushed home and he was greeted by Sylvia. Sylvia then asked about Cain's exam. Cain replied that the exam went well. He has completed the exam well. Sylvia was happy and immediately prepared a celebration for Cain's passing the exam. But Cain said that it was still too early to celebrate. Suddenly, Cain's stomach rumbled, so Sylvia rushed to prepare food for Cain. After finishing the meal, Cain met with the king. The king was surprised to read the message from the academy. He asked if Cain had done anything at the training ground. Cain said he only used basic level magic. He didn't even cast his emperor level magic. Suddenly the king and others were surprised to hear that Cain had emperor level power. The king asked where Cain took the exam. Then Cain said he entered the south gate. They realized that Cain was wrong. He should have entered the north gate, the noble exam place. Eric said the academy representative was surprised and reported about the student who destroyed the training ground. Prime Minister Magna showed proof of the compensation bill. The king scolded Cain for not being careful. Cain then apologized to the king. Then the king said that today was the graduation announcement. Cain rushed to the school bulletin board. Suddenly he was surprised when Slick appeared. He said that Cain was in first place while Telestia was in second place and Silk was in third place. Then Silk said he heard that Cain registered at the south gate. Silk said that Telestia would be angry because she didn't see Cain yesterday. After that, Silk left, leaving Cain, who was afraid. Then Cain saw Rain, who was busy giving instructions. Rain then approached and hugged Cain. Rain congratulated Cain on his achievement. She reminded him that Cain would give a speech during the acceptance ceremony, because every year, the participant who came in first place would definitely give a speech. After that, Cain returned home. And Sylvia welcomed him enthusiastically, and she prepared a meal for Mr. Cain. After that, the acceptance ceremony was held. It seemed that both of Cain's parents were present. Telestia and Silk greeted Cain. Cain gave a short speech. The king appeared to brief the academy. He asked for the academy's help to take care of students like Cain. Then Cain entered the classroom. He was greeted by Telestia and Silk. Not long after, Teacher Elka appeared and introduced herself. Cain and the others chose their majors. Then Telestia and Silk said that they would take a suitable major so they could help Cain. Cain thanked them for always remembering him. During the break session, Cain came out of the class. He saw Parma, who was being bullied by the little boys. Then the little boys insulted Parma. They wondered why half-animal humans could be in the A class. They continued to mock Parma until she was sad. From afar, Cain saw it. He approached them and said, "Why did they bully on the first day?" Suddenly, they were shocked to see Cain. Cain said the upper-class nobles had no right to treat Parma like that. Seeing that, Silk and Telestia came over. The bullies were shocked to see her. Princess Telestia scolded them, so the three bullies apologized. Then they invited Parma to play together. While Cain was told to sit waiting for Silk and Telestia to finish chatting, and he resigned himself and sat pondering. Then a strange voice was heard. A man invited Cain to meet him in the library. Cain immediately rushed to go. There was an adult man who was making coffee. He introduced himself. His name was Shina Kazuya. They sat down while drinking coffee. Cain felt déjà vu with the taste of coffee in his previous world. Cain and Kazuya started chatting. Cain realized that the person in front of him was not an ordinary person. It turned out that the man was Yuya Terra. Cain was surprised because he should have lived 300 years ago. Then Yuya laughed after being considered a ghost by Cain. Yuya asked Cain to see his power stats. After seeing, Cain was very surprised because he was a creator god. It turns out that Yuya, the first king, has become the creator god of the world he created himself. And all of that has been going on for 300 years. After that, Yuya told the reason why he called Cain to his world. It turns out that it was the gods who asked him to train Cain to become stronger. The confident Cain felt that he was very strong. He was challenged by Yuya to grab the biscuit in his hand. When Cain wanted to grab it, it turned out that Yuya was much faster than Cain. The reason the gods asked him to train Cain was because there was someone he had to fight. Then Yuya explained that 300 years ago, there was an entity that killed each other. And the entity took advantage of its role by lowering revelations and pitting each country against each other, so that they fight each other. Yuya told him that the person he was going to fight was an evil god named Aaron. It turned out that the evil god had been sealed in the past, but over time the seal began to crack and sooner or later the evil god would rise again. Cain then asked Yuya to seal him again if he was free from his seal, but it turns out that Yuya can't interfere with Cain's world. Yuya said that what would happen was related to Cain's life in the past. Cain was confused and asked what he meant. Yuya held Cain's hand, then moved him to the shore. Then Yuya asked Cain to pass through the forest behind him first. After he made it through the forest, Yuya promised to explain the meaning of his words earlier. Because it would take a long time, Cain was worried about his school. Yuya said that a year in this world was equal to 1 day in his world. Not long after that, Yuya left Cain alone. Then Cain began his journey into the forest, and he encountered various types of monsters. On the other hand, Sylvia was very worried because Cain did not come home. Then Telestia and Silk came to Cain's house and asked why Cain did not go to school. Sylvia answered that Cain hadn't come home from yesterday. Hearing that, they were very panicked, and they decided to wait until Cain came home. On the other hand, Cain was getting frustrated because he had not been able to sleep well for a long time. Cain heard a voice in the distance, then he approached the source of the sound. It turned out to be the sound of a white puppy that looked injured. Cain intended to kill the puppy, but he remembered his determination to protect others. Cain, who was weak, tried to heal the puppy until Cain fell unconscious. But it turned out that while he was unconscious, the dog continued to fight the monster that attacked Cain. After Cain woke up, he invited the puppy to come with him. Cain gave the puppy the name Haku. From then on, they went on adventures together until Cain's body looked bigger. Seeing Cain, who came with a puppy. Yuya was surprised that Cain could be friends with a Fenrir puppy known as a sacred animal after spending 4 years in the forest. The next training Cain will do with his new teacher named Dirain. Before that, Cain promised Yuya about what Aaron's relationship with his life was, but before he told the story, the scene moved to Cain, who was training with Dirain. Dirain said that Cain was weaker than him. Cain is also weaker than Yuya, and Yuya is weaker than Aaron. Then Cain was hit by Dirain to faint. After Cain woke up, Cain went downstairs. He was greeted by Ruri. Cain looked very excited because he saw a baby dragon under the stairs. Long story short, they had dinner together. He looked very grateful because it had been 4 years he hadn't eaten delicious food. Hearing that made Dirain and Ruri happy. On the other hand, Silk and Telestia were very worried because Cain didn't come home. When she saw them stop, Sylvia immediately scolded them. It looks like they are both training. Back to Cain, who was training with Dirain. Seeing Cain, who was being beaten badly by Dirain. After training, Dirain was a little proud because before he had to carry Cain, but this time Cain could walk on his own, and a year has passed. Cain's training with Dirain still continues. Then the scene returns to Yuya, who is explaining that Aaron was once the god of entertainment, which means that there are not only 7 isekai gods, but 8. And that is the reason why this world has no entertainment at all. Aaron will use his revelation to make all of humanity play in his dead game. That's why the gods kicked him out. But that actually made Aaron an evil god. If he manages to escape, then he will do the dead game again. Hearing that made Cain angry, and at all costs he would stop it. Yuya replied that Cain had to be stronger so he could protect everyone. Yuya said that he had failed to protect his 2 friends, and as it turned out, Yuya's 2 friends were Cain's parents on Earth. Then the story backwards to 300 years ago. seen Cain's parents on Earth who were very worried about him. Yuya looked angry because Marina had sent the three of them to Isekai. Then Marina explained the situation there. After that, Marina protected Yuya and Cain's parents by releasing the three of them from responsibility. Instead, the three of them had to see the strangeness that happened in that world. After that, the seven gods told them that Eren was the core of the problem at that time. Because they were gods, they could not interfere. Then the gods asked them for help. The three of them were given a crystal ball to seal Eren. Yuya and Cain's parents fought Eren. The fight resulted in many victims, until Cain's parents sacrificed themselves so that Yuya could seal Eren. At the end of their life, Cain's parents were worried about their son who lived alone on Earth. On the other hand, Cain, who was training with Durain, seemed to have dominated the fight, until finally Cain managed to defeat Durain. And it became a sign that their training was over. After thanking Durain, Cain immediately went to Yuya's place to see the graves of his parents. Yuya said that Cain's parents were always worried about him. Cain cried and thanked his parents for always worrying about him. Cain also thanked Yuya. After that, Yuya then gave biscuits to Cain. And now Cain was able to snatch the biscuit that was in Yuya's hand. Then Cain asked Yuya to return himself to his original world. But before that, Yuya had to restore Cain's body to its original state. Then Daeron came and asked Cain to bring the dragon child and Haku. Then Yuya entrusted a sword to Cain to be handed over to the king. After Cain left, Durain said to Yuya that Cain would be much stronger than them. After returning home, it turned out that everyone was waiting for him. Cain apologized to them. Then Silk and Telestia said, while waiting for Cain to return. They both learned to Sylvia to make a biscuit. Cain was touched and immediately ate all the biscuits very ravenously.
The king is puzzled by the letter from the first king and doubts if it was really written by Yuya. Cain explains that Yuya created a new world and became its god. He also gave Cain a present for the king, which shocks everyone. It is the legendary sword that killed the Black Dragon. The king is convinced by Cain's words, but he wonders what kind of training he mentioned in the letter. Cain says that his training was hard and brutal, just like his wife's nightly affairs with other men. He had to fight monsters and survive deadly simulations for 5 years. The king is confused and asks Cain how he could have trained for 5 years when he is still a small and ugly kid. The Duke tells Cain that he forgot to accept the quest to become an A-rank adventurer, and his license will be cancelled if he doesn't go to the guild headquarters. Cain apologizes and says that he was too busy lately. The guildmaster tells him that Tiphina was so sad that her love for him might burst. Cain doesn't care about her feelings and only wants to keep his adventurer license. The guildmaster reminds him of the requirements to be an A-rank adventurer. He has to defeat 10 bandits on the road from Gracia to the royal capital, but it should be easy for him since he is the strongest person in the capital. Cain says he will take care of the bandits, and the guildmaster is eager to see him do it. Cain flies over the forest and sees a carriage attacked by the bandits. He lands and offers to help, but he recognizes Nina, Sabinos, and Millie. Millie is badly hurt, so Cain heals her with his ability. The bandits think Cain is just a kid who should be sucking on mommy milkers, but Cain vows to make them pay for hurting his teachers. He uses his boost ability and his new sword to destroy their cores one by one. He thinks it is hard to hold back his power. Sabinos thanks him for saving them, but Millie wonders why he is there. Cain says he took a quest from the guild and shocks them by showing his A-rank adventurer card. They are surprised that he is higher ranked than them. Sabinos thinks that explains how he defeated the bandits, but he wonders what they will do with them. They drive the carriage to Sabinos' house with the bandits tied up. The people in the capital are disgusted by the bandits' crimes. Parma greets Cain at the house, but she is stunned to see the bandits. Her father tells her that Cain rescued them from the bandits, and she thinks he is cool for working hard as a baron. Millie is confused that he is a baron and worries that she will have to act differently around him. Nina thinks he is a dream come true for gold diggers. Cain tells them not to worry about formalities since they are his teachers. Millie is happy that he is still the same person, even though he has grown so much in a few years. Millie unlocks a new kind of milkers for him, the teacher milkers. Cain thinks they are the best milkers ever, but he runs away to report to the guild without them. At the guild, Cain gives Retia the proof of the bandit's subjugation. Retia congratulates him, but they see Claude trying to take Millie away with him. Cain stops him, and the bandit recognizes him and faints from his aura. Claude comes behind him, and Cain greets him. Claude praises him for getting rid of those scumbags, but Cain says he did it to protect his friends. Claude is surprised that he has friends and sees Nina and Millie. Cain wonders how he knows his teachers, and Claude reveals that Millie is his sister. They tell him that they taught Cain since he was 5, and Claude thinks they should celebrate with some juice. They drink juice, and Millie tells them how Cain saved them from the bandits. Nina also tells them that he is an A-rank adventurer, and Claude is shocked that he caught up with him so fast, but he thinks it makes sense since he was the only one who could match him in the exam. Millie is amazed by this because her brother was the only one who ever became an A-rank adventurer with only his sword skills. Nina thinks it is obvious since Cain is a baron who has his own mansion, and thinks he is a dream come true for gold diggers. Claude is shocked that he is a baron and begs him not to punish him for his rudeness, but Cain yells at them to calm down, and Millie wonders how he became so strong. Cain can't tell her that he trained with the gods, but she thinks it's not surprising that he killed a red dragon when he was a kid. Claude thinks Cain might be cheating for defeating an SS rank monster, but Millie and Nina show them their magic bags. Rena wonders how much they can hold, but Millie says she never filled them up. She asks Cain where he got them and how much they can hold. Nina says they can fit a mansion inside. Rena thinks they are treasures of the nation and begs Cain to make one for her. Cain agrees and Rena faints. Claude tells her she will forget everything tomorrow. Cain is relieved, but he remembers he has school tomorrow and panics because he skipped it last week. Claude wonders how he is doing at school, especially as a baron, but Cain changes the subject. Nina feels sorry for him and offers to hug him, but he runs away. Claude thinks it's clear that Cain will major in computer science. They see Retia looking for someone and ask her what's wrong. She says she needs a substitute teacher for tomorrow's adventure class. Claude thinks this is a perfect chance and asks Retia to tell them more about the class. The next day, the teacher tells the students to cast their magic at the target. Cain thinks he will finally show his amazing powers, but the teacher calls his name and says he can't use magic in this academy. All the teachers know this because his beginner magic can break all the barriers. Claude's group watches him and sees that he doesn't fit in with them and thinks they should help him. In the next class, the teacher introduces the adventurers who will help them, and everyone recognizes them. Claude asks the class how many of them are adventurers and sees that everyone has a guild card. Cain realizes he is in trouble, and Claude asks him why he doesn't have a guild card and tells him to take it out. Cain doesn't want to make them feel bad because he has a gold card and thinks they will hate him more. They all glare at him, and Cain says he left it at home. Claude thinks that's disappointing and tells him to never forget it again. Millie sees how they look at him, and Rena thinks he is definitely a computer science major instead of a magic major. In the training hall, Claude tells them they will learn how to use Boost today. The students volunteer to go first, and Cain thinks he will finally impress Claude with his skills, but he sees everyone else go before him and sees the line that formed. He is the last one left, but this is their plan because they want to show how much stronger they are, and if Cain can keep up with them, everyone will be amazed by his strength. This is their 700 IQ magic lesson. With Cain at the end of the line, he worries that he won't have time for the duel, but his turn finally comes. They jump at each other and clash swords, but the bell rings to end the class. The teacher stops the class and Cain begs for one more minute, but the teacher says no. Claude apologizes and promises to fight him next time, but the teacher says there won't be a next time because Cain damaged the facilities there. Cain wishes this didn't happen, and Claude says goodbye to him. Cain vents his anger by destroying all the trees. A huge dragon comes to him, but Cain cuts it down with one strike. He sees a big rock in front of him and launches hundreds of fireballs at the ground. The guards think the god of destruction has been unleashed, and Garm leads the army to the source. Cain calms down and teleports away. When Garm reaches the crater, he sees his emblem again. Back at the king's room, he tells him that his useless father thought the god of destruction appeared after the whole forest was burned. He wonders if he angered the gods and he tries to explain what happened, but the king tells him to hurry up and say it. Cain cries because he didn't prepare a comeback for today. Far away, a goblin sees a sphere, but a dragon eats him. After eating the stone, the seal weakens, and even though he only ate a part of his body, it should be enough. At school, the teacher says they will learn summoning magic today and asks if Cain is there. Cain thinks he should leave, but the teacher says he can stay since they won't use attack magic. She introduces them to the expert of the day, who is a palace mage named Grat. He explains the two types of summoning magic. One is to bond with a monster and make a contract with it, and the other is to summon a monster from a magic seal and make a contract. Since there are no wild monsters around, they will use magic circles to summon today. He gives everyone a magic seal and they quickly summon their familiars. One of them summons a huge beast, but the beast thinks he is ugly and rejects him. Grat tells him not to worry because he can still use magic, but he will probably be ugly his whole life. Finally, it's Cain's turn, and he asks if it's okay to use all his power for this summoning. Grat says it's fine, because they will just leave if they don't want to make a contract, so he can use all his magic. Cain finally uses all his magic power, and activates the seal with all his mana. A blue light shines with a strong aura, but Grat begs him to stop before it's too late. But the summon already appears, and a weird man with horns wonders why a lowly human summoned the Prince of Darkness. Cain blinds everyone else and wonders if this man is really the Prince of Darkness. The man casts a red light at Cain and sees his status. He walks towards Cain, so Cain draws his sword, but the prince kneels down and apologizes. He says he will serve as the Chosen One's minion, and he will gladly make a summoning contract with Cain. He also says he will destroy a whole nation with the demon clan if Cain wants him to. Cain says he only wants to destroy his mommy milkers, and he doesn't need a whole demon clan for that. Seth admires him and introduces himself as the Prince of Darkness. He says he is happy to be summoned by the Chosen One anytime. Cain is pleased with his obedience, but asks him to stop calling him the Chosen One. Seth is amazed by Cain's modesty and promises to destroy a nation for Cain with the demon clan. After he leaves, Grat wonders if he heard the name Prince of Darkness, but Cain says he was too strong to make a contract with him. They agree to go with that story, and Cain is glad he covered it up. But he is in the king's room for the 69th time. The king tells Cain he is tired of roasting him every episode, so he just asks him what he summoned at school today. Cain says he summoned a demon, but the king says he wasn't born yesterday and tells him to tell the truth. Cain admits it was the Prince of Darkness and everyone freaks out. The king knows he wouldn't just send him back, so Cain says he also made a contract with him. They all have a heart attack, and the king can't believe that Cain's ugly ass has the power to destroy a nation and his daughter. Cain apologizes and says it's not his fault his daughter calls him daddy instead of her real father. Grat is new to these roasts, so he wonders how he can talk to the king like that. The king thinks that Cain's training with the first king made him more disrespectful, so he asks Cain to show his crazy status window. He tells Grat that he will see who the real boss of the nation is, and he will be executed if he tells anyone this secret. When he opens his status, they all scream in shock. He has the demigod title and his status is immeasurable. Grat bows down and promises to roast the king with him, but Cain says he can handle the ugly king by himself. They all think about calling him master, and the king is scared because he has the power to destroy the world. Cain tells them to relax and asks them to treat him as usual. The king agrees to treat him like before, but thinks that with this status, he might give him the whole kingdom if he asked for it. After his blood pressure went up, he tells Grat that this is why he lets Cain roast him, and for Cain, he will give him a town. The king thinks that a man who can't protect a house or a town can't protect a nation. Sylvia hears about the news and congratulates him, saying she will finally give him the best maid milkers he wants. Cain tells her to shut up, but Sylvia says she will give him her milkers whether he likes it or not. The butler comes in to stop her madness and tells him that Garm's town is about to be attacked by monsters from the forest. In the town, all the people prepare to leave, so Cain goes to meet Jin. His brother tells him how the number of monsters in the forest increased, and some of them are too strong to stop. Their power is similar to the forces that attacked their city 10 years ago, so he sent a party to investigate the source. but they couldn't confirm if it was an invasion or just a small increase in monsters. Because of this, they can't send knights on a large scale, so they are trying to handle it carefully. After hearing this, Cain volunteers to go into the forest, but Jin thinks he is too young for this. To prove him wrong, Cain shows him his card and reminds him that he killed a red dragon alone. Jin is happy that he has such a powerful brother, so he asks him to help them with this investigation. Cain says he will go to the Adventurers Guild to see their opinion first. At the guild, the new receptionist thinks they are desperate for hiring a kid, but she screams when she sees his rank. Rudy apologizes for the rookie's impoliteness and welcomes him back. She asks him what he is doing there today. He tells her that his brother told him that the forest is in trouble, and she says that all the adventurers came back with serious injuries after going inside. Millie and Nina enter, and Cain is happy to see them again. By them, he means those two. He wonders what they are doing there, and never looks away from their eyes. Nina says they were summoned by the guild to make a strong party that will go into the forest. Cain acts sad to get a better view, and Millie says that her brother and his wife will join them soon. Cain tells Rudy that he will go into the forest alone, but Rudy begs him to take someone with him. He tells her that he has some friends in the forest. He summons his two pets who lick him, but they remember that they are tsunderes. Cain feels a sinister presence around them. His search ability fails, and as he kills monsters, he feels that something is watching him. He decides to summon the Prince of Darkness, and Seth kneels down to serve his master. Cain asks Seth if he can investigate the forest, and if he senses something strange about it. Seth feels the air and senses a huge presence with a lot of monsters around him. He says this is not normal, especially with how high level they are. To learn more, Seth asks Cain if he can summon a subordinate to help him. Cain gives him permission, and Seth summons Dalmatia. Alfred sees Cain behind him and is shocked that Seth made a contract with the chosen one of the gods. Alfred kneels down to serve him instead of Batman, but Cain tells them to stop with the references and investigate the forest already. Seth says that Dalmatia is one of the 4 heavenly kings and specializes in investigations. He says he will handle it and opens a hole of cockroaches to search the forest. Cain is scared and asks him to close it, so Dalmatia sends them away from Cain. They help him find the many monsters hiding around them, and Cain takes them all down with one hit. Dalmatia is amazed by the power of the chosen one of the gods, and worries that he could have killed them in a second. Cain teleports back to town, and Millie and Nina are shocked to see all the A and S rank monsters. Claude shows up, and they wonder where he got all those monsters. Cain says they were all in the forest, but there are stronger ones deeper inside. Dalmatia's bugs find something trying to scare them away, saying, "Don't come closer." But Seth won't let anyone intimidate him, so he asks Dalmatia if he is rusty. They are going to break through the enemy defenses, and he tells Dalmatia to think of this as exercise to keep his old muscles strong. As they get closer to the source of the monsters, Aaron's eye sees them and releases all the monsters to eat the humans. Thousands of monsters rush towards the town, and Seth teleports to Cain's location, saying that the monster attack has started. Cain tells Rudy to warn everyone and tells Claude to gather the adventurers so he can stop the monsters from entering the town. Rudy says it's too risky for him to go out alone, but Cain says he has friends who are stronger than a rank adventurers. Seth is surprised that he made his first friend in years, so he swears to sacrifice his life to help him. They run to the forest, but Tiphina shows up and hugs her husband. She says she heard about the monster attack, and Cain says he is going to the forest. She tries to follow him, but Cain tells her to stay and protect the town and his home. Tiphina says she will do anything to protect her husband's home, and Cain leaves. As they run, Seth wonders why he doesn't teleport, and Cain says he is the only one in this nation who can teleport. He asks Seth to be careful. Meanwhile, Dalmatia is killing all the dragons that appear, and when one of them attacks him from behind, a big flame saves him. Cain uses many infernos to kill the monsters below him, and feels a strong presence from the center of the forest. Aaron says he is waiting for the Old One's followers, and says the game has started. The monsters keep rampaging the forest, but Seth tells Cain he will handle them while he fights their leader. He tells Cain he will summon his minions, but he can't promise that the forest will be safe. He tells Cain to be careful too, and Cain smiles before flying away. The ground shakes, and the army struggles to protect the people as they go inside the town's walls. Nina uses her search ability and sees a lot of monsters coming, so Millie runs to the forest, saying she wants to act like a teacher for once. Nina runs after her, and Claude and his wife follow them. They go to help Cain while fighting the monsters. Seth summons his loyal followers, and they wonder why he summoned the 4 heavenly kings, but they see the chaos. Seth says his only friend in life asked for his help, and the kings are surprised that Seth made a friend. Dalmatia says he was shocked too, and says that Seth made a contract with him, shocking the 4 kings. They wonder how someone could have so much power to make a contract with the Prince of Darkness, so Dalmatia says that he is the great demigod, the chosen one of God. Seth says he will explain later, but he needs their help now. They all go to help him fight the monsters. Meanwhile, Cain flies around and uses his inferno to rain fire on the battlefield. The fire missiles kill all the enemies, but a big purple blast comes at him and he dodges it barely. Another blast comes, but Cain uses inferno to block it. When it clears, Cain sees the black dragon and realizes it's Aaron, the former god of amusement. Aaron powers up and says it's too bad that only part of him came back because he had to use the dragon's body. He uses his magic powers to release more monsters to the city. He says this is a game to see if the monsters can eat all the humans, and wonders how long his friends will last on the other side of the forest. Claude sees people floating in the air, but his wife tells him to stop kidding. But they all see people floating in the sky. They realize they are on their side, and Nina thinks they are probably Cain's overpowered friends. The 4 heavenly kings are getting overpowered, but Seth tells them to keep fighting to make it easier for the humans. Nina uses her search ability and sees that they are about to be surrounded, so Millie and her brother run forward to fight the incoming beasts. Cain confronts Aaron, and the god of amusement is angry that his eyes are the same as the ones who sealed him. He regrets that he was sealed and wants to make Cain suffer for years, but he decides to just kill him now and breathes fire at him. Cain dodges it barely and sees how powerful his attack is and how it turned all the cockroaches into sushi by touching them. Aaron breathes fire again, but Cain jumps back and uses his inferno spell at the dragon. The flames don't hurt Aaron at all, and he says that his weak magic won't affect him. Meanwhile, Cain's friends are getting overwhelmed by the forces, but Claude is excited because he will cheat on his wife later, and Millie can't wait to give Cain her milkers. Aaron's attacks chase Cain, and he flies and summons Haku and Jin to fight the dragon. They avoid his attacks, but Aaron's tail hits Haku and knocks him out and prepares a deadly attack. Nina runs out of magic and Claude is stuck with Millie. After Nina killed it, a huge beast appeared and was ready to eat Claude, but iron spears went through its head, and Tefana showed up to save Millie. She told them that backup was here and she will defend the front line from now on. Claude thanked her, but said he won't let her do it alone because that's what his good friend always says. Haku gets a terrible hit that Jin tries to block, and Aaron prepares another hit to burn them, calling it annoying how Cain wants to save them. But Cain rushes down to stop his attack from burning them, saying that they are his friends, that he will protect because he loves them, and this feeling is never annoying. He says this is not God's will, this is his will, because he only wants everyone to smile and activates his overload ability. Aaron recognizes this light as the same one from before, and Cain uses his Saint Sanctuary with the only wish of protecting everyone. Their blasts push each other, but Cain yells with all his strength and his magic powers overpower Aaron. The light goes up to the sky, and Cain says he will protect their smiles and asks his mom and dad for more power. Haku and Jin bite him to stop his attack, and Seth and Dalmatia think he is terrible for acting like this. They wonder if he really had to destroy a whole mile of fertile land, but Cain thinks he was just trying to kill the black dragon. They ask him where he sees a black dragon and tell him to stop being stupid, because the monsters left the forest and the attack is over thanks to him. Claude runs to hug Cain, but Tefana gets there first, and Millie hugs him tighter. Here in this world, Cain thinks he can help people, and Dalmatia thinks he is an amazing chosen one of God. They laugh before leaving, and think he will be one of the greatest men. Back at the king's room, the ugly bastard realizes this is the finale, so he decides to roast Cain harder this time. He shouts at him, and asks him about the pillar of light that they saw from the castle, and wonders if his small brain was behind it. Cain tries to explain that the pillar of light was meant to pierce the black dragon. He says sorry because his intermediate magic was not enough, so he had to use royal level magic. The king tries to shout at him, but he realizes he didn't have a comeback ready, and Cain says that's probably because his daughter knows who her real daddy is. The king is totally roasted and thinks he has finally given up and admitted defeat. After all, he will marry his daughter anyway, and wonders what he can give him for his victory. Cain says he can give him a domain, so the king decides to reward him for his deeds with his own domain. Cain appears before the king in front of everyone, and the king gives him the domain of Dorenthal, and Cain accepts it humbly to rule it. Back at Garm's home, he wishes it was any other domain, but Tifana hugs him in tears. She says that Dorenthal is the worst town, because their corrupt adventurers guild made many previous nobles run away from it. Telestia thinks it's cruel and wants to yell at her father, but Cain tells her that this actually makes him happy because he wants to fix a broken town and make everyone smile. He asks them all to rebuild it with him, so they all agree, but tell him not to do too much. And so, they go to build the new domain together. When he entered the city, the guards saw his high rank right away, and the roasted king asked his messenger what happened to Cain after he got there. The guild had a welcome party for him, but Cain dealt with them easily with his fire powers, and while he was in the tavern, he saw how the men abused a cat girl, so he taught them a lesson by kicking them out and making them land in funny positions. But he was locked up by 12, but Cain got out easily as he talked to his future wife. Seth came screaming for help and said that his wife found out about his cheating and kicked him out of the castle. His demon wife shows up, Lefane, and a new kind of milker is unlocked, the demon milkers. Cain introduces himself back and she asks him what he thinks of her man. So Cain tells her that he is worthless trash for cheating on an unmatched beauty. Hearing those words makes her want to join his harem, but Seth tells him to be careful because women change after marriage. Telestia agrees and says that Seth probably said all kinds of sweet things when they got married, so betrayal is unforgivable. But Cain wonders why it feels like they are talking about him. Lefane praises the girls for saying what she wanted to hear, so she promises that if Cain ever made them cry, she would make him regret it. Lefane told Seth that he can come back home just this once, so she shows him what true hell looks like, and Seth says goodbye to Cain. He was never seen again. Eventually, Cain stormed into the church and exposed the cult running the city, so he subdued them all easily and built a huge wall around the whole city. Zenom thinks it's great, because they still have many things they need him to do. Tifana and the girls were shocked that he was building a castle bigger than the king's, but the young Chad laughed it off because he knows he is bigger than the king in more ways than one. They wondered why this was necessary, and Cain thought it was because he reincarnated into this world with all his past memories and became an off-the-charts noble with level 10 protections. But that's a story for next time. All of his friends were mad at him, especially Sylvia because she still hasn't given him maid milkers, but Cain apologized. Thanks for watching, please subscribe and see you on the next episode. Love you guys.